All sports, all plays. Yeah. All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. 365, we making a plays. You talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. Hitting the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, they work in your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. All sports, all plays.
What's up? What's up? How's everybody doing? Thanks for joining the show. This is another episode of Loose Lugs. I'm your host, Chris Osborne. Show's presented by All Sports, All Plays Network, powered by Sports and Culture Media. I want to give a shout out to the Asapsportsnetwork. They're now an LLC. That's a big step for them. And congratulations. I'm glad they are growing. We've had this partnership for a couple of months now between All Sports and Sports and Culture Media. I feel like we're both doing a lot of good things back and forth with the collaboration. So, great job, both Tyler Butler from Sports and Culture and Freddie Henderson, reaching out and making this work. I know I've benefited because I'm getting to sit here and talk to you guys. So I'm stoked. Anyway, let's go into some NASCAR stuff. I've read a lot of comments on Twitter and Facebook, and everybody has an opinion, and they're always going to. That's normal. But most people, I think, are upset at Denny Hamlin for the Martinsville Speedway ending. There's the group that's saying, well, he should have let him do his burnout. He should have gave him his victory. I'm going to be on both sides of the fence on that for a minute because I have an opinion, but I don't think my opinion is as relevant as facts. The fact is Denny Hamlin's been dumped twice now in a span of about 10 races. Chase Briscoe dumped him at the Indy Roval. And then this one I don't think was as much of a dumping by Alex Bowman. I've seen the replay as much as anybody else. It looked to me like he got down into the turn. And instead of a smooth transition, he got it a little hot, made himself loose, tried to correct it, and went up the hill and got into Hamlin. It looked very much not on purpose. But that's easy for us to say, sitting here in my home, sitting in your home. I think the fact is, as good of a driver as Bowman is, he could have done that better. I do think that Hamlin should have handled himself better after the race. I think he went out and was, I wouldn't say anything close to, malicious in what he was doing with, I wouldn't say his payback. The race was over, but he was very unprofessional. He should have given Bowman at least, let him do his burnout. Then after the race, go up, say something to him. But see the replay first. I think the replay is a little more telling than, what your crew chief and your spotter saw on the radio or on the replay. See it for yourself. Then make a judgment, then be upset or just say, you know what, I've done it because Denny Hamlin did it to Chase Elliott a few years ago in the same situation, closing laps of the race. It happens. It's a race. It's short track racing. It's Martinsville. That's what you wait for all year with these short tracks. Bristol too. The Bristol races are a little different because there is a little more room to pass at Bristol. Even though the high line is definitely the preferred line, Bristol, you can pass somebody on the bottom if you're fast enough. Martinsville doesn't have a second groove. If you're going to pass somebody, you're going to have to outmuscle them. You're going to have to outbrake them to a turn, or you're just going to have to give them the bumper and hope you don't wreck them. Just move them up out of the way. That's how you pass at Martinsville. And I think that bit of frustration is normal to, get spun when you're leading. I think it would have been a lot worse if it cost him, a championship 4 spot. Luckily for him, it didn't. He had enough points to, get a few spots on the back green, and was still, I think, 10 or 11 points to the good. But yeah, that's one of those racing deals where I see both sides. I see why both guys are, have a claim to why I'm upset or why he shouldn't be upset. I just think it's racing. Now, Brad Keselowski, Chase Elliott, really Brad Keselowski versus the field. I mean, he was getting into his own teammate, Joey Logano, there, towards the end of the race. And it's the same thing for me. I think it's racing. That's a little more aggressive racing and desperation. And you have to be a little more patient than I think Brad was being. And not because it was disrespectful. I mean, that's one thing, but he used his car up, and the few laps that he was getting people sideways and getting under people. I mean, he used his car up to where there at the end he couldn't pass Kyle Busch for second, and Kyle Busch will be the first to admit they had trouble all day. Their car was awful. So to not be able to pass Kyle Busch there at the end just shows you how much he used up his car to get to where he was. And I don't know. I've seen the replays of the Chase Elliott, Brad Keselowski incident too, and I think that's the same thing. It's Brad being desperate, being very aggressive, and putting his bumper where it may not have should have been. But I think when you compare the two incidents, Chase Elliott getting spun by Brad Keselowski, Denny Hamlin getting spun by Alex Bowman, they're very, very similar. The reactions by the drivers were very, very different. Denny Hamlin went off the loose end, or the deep end, I should say, and was very upset. Chase Elliott after the race just kind of said, that's racing. That's happened to me. I've done it. That's racing. He didn't seem to be too upset. So I don't know, where you guys sit on that. I kind of sit on the fence, and I don't know if that's the right thing or the wrong thing. I'm not too worried about that. I think more of from what I saw, it was Martinsville racing. It's what you're going to get when you put drivers in a must-win situation. We're knowing that the chance at a championship, which is so elusive, you have to win to get there. I'm going to do whatever I've got to do to get there. And I don't fault Brad Keselowski for driving the way he did. I mean, he knew at that point in the race, you're 6 points behind or you're 4 points or whatever. You have to win this. And he knew that at the start of the race that this was probably going to be a race he had to win or at least get a lot of stage points, and it didn't work out. Anyway, that's okay. We've covered that's Martinsville's actual incidents. There was a few others that I don't really want to necessarily dive into because that's Martinsville racing. And, if you watch the races and you're not thrilled with that, you're not a huge race fan. You have a driver, and if your driver doesn't win, then maybe you're just always upset. I don't know how to, handle that. But that was good racing. That was what you want to see out of an elimination race for a chance to make it to the championship for. So let's go into the actual racing that was consistent, which was, Chase Elliott dominated the first 3/4 of that race. He won both stages, which locked him in. It made it a lot easier when, they started tumbling on spots at pit road. And, Chase said after the race, we made some tough decisions. He made some calls for adjustments that didn't work out. And I think that, to own that is a great thing for him to, say this is on me. The crew did everything right. We did well everywhere. It happens. Just don't let it carry over to next week. Don't have that on your shoulders. Go to Phoenix with optimism that this is going to be a great race for us. Yada yada. Same thing for Larson. Larson looked great for maybe a half a stage. And once Chase caught him and passed him, they started working on it on pit road, and they turned it into more of a test session, which I get because it's, statistically they've said, that's one of Kyle Larson's worst tracks. Totally understand. And they didn't have to do anything to make it to the championship. They'd already been locked in with 2 wins. But they faded quick. And, everybody's talk is momentum going into that final race. They don't have momentum right now. They didn't look good. They didn't race well. They made adjustments that were not in the right direction. And I think that kind of leads me to not pick Larson at Phoenix. And I'll get into that a little more later with who I'm picking for next week. But I think that you needed good momentum to carry. And none of these 4 drivers that are going to be racing for next week, the championship, none of them have great momentum. I mean, Truex Jr. just about lost his championship 4 spot. Chase got spun and didn't recover. And before that even happened, they were shaky. Their car was not as good as it was earlier. Kyle Larson, like I said, was just not consistent. He wasn't getting good lap times down, and they didn't make good adjustments. So for Cliff Daniels and Kyle Larson, they go into Phoenix with kind of a cloud over their head. And Phoenix might be different because it's a track that, it's a different style track completely. And then, you got Denny Hamlin, who did have momentum, was leading the race, but now he's got all this stuff surrounding him with, was he unprofessional? I think so. I don't think you interrupt somebody's victory donuts for any reason. Give them their chance. Then when they get on pit road, talk it out. You want to strangle them there? Strangle them there. Just don't interrupt part of the ceremony of a win, because Denny's won in the same circumstances several times. Nobody interrupted his celebration. They let him finish. So I think he's going to look back on that and then in the near future and say, yeah, I should have done that differently or something. But anyway, but my point is, none of these guys have momentum heading into Phoenix. They've all pretty much got to find common ground. The thing that's great about this race coming up, Phoenix, NASCAR is going to allow them to have a practice session because it's the championship race. And I think that's why when I'm picking a driver, I'm not even looking at a driver at this point. I'm looking at who has the best crew chief, because we haven't had a practice session this year. And now you're throwing that in there. Now you're going to give these crew chiefs a chance to adjust the camber, adjust the track bars, the ride height, the shocks, the springs, everything that normal practice sessions allow you to work on. So we're going to see whose crew chief came to play, whose crew chief brought the notebook of, this is what did excellent before, it's not working here, let's get something different. I mean, you can't just go off old notes. And that's what, happens at almost every one of these tracks. You show up with no practice. You're relying on that old notebook to bring it home for you. And so now you're giving them a chance to get out there and do some practice, run some laps, see where your tire wear is at, see where you can improve. So I think when I'm looking at a driver for next week to who wins, I think I'm going for a crew chief instead. That might be the big difference maker. You got, Cliff Daniels for Kyle Larson, Alan Gustafson for Chase Elliott. These guys have thick notebooks to work off of. And they've got notes from past champions, Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon, who have run really well here at Phoenix. This is a different car. This is a different tire. It's different circumstances, but those notes are going to be very valuable. And then you go over and look at the Gibbs too, who are in it. Martin Truex Jr. with James Small and Chris Gabehart for Denny Hamlin. Those guys have 0 championships. Martin Truex Jr. has a championship, but that was not with James Small. That was the Cole Pern. So, you look at the 3 drivers that are not Chase Elliott, their crew chiefs combined 0 titles. I mean, it really makes you pick differently when you think of it as, okay, if every driver has a chance to adjust their car at practice session versus just show up, what crew chief does the best job to give my driver the best chance to win? And Cliff Daniels makes a good case. 9 wins on the year, but all 9 wins have been at races without practice sessions. That's going off of notes from previous, seasons, races, whatever. And then you throw in adjustments during the race. Now you look at the guys like Alan Gustafson, who was in this race last year. And he's taking notes from last year's race and what worked well. And he can go from the spring race, but more importantly to me, the fall race last year for a title. Different weather situations have different outcomes on these cars. They're very weather temperament, no matter what track type. You got cooler weather, the car's going to be a little more snug. It's going to handle differently in the turns. The air is just different for the fall race. And in the spring, it's warmer. The cars are a little bit looser. It's just a different feel. So I don't know that I'd lean on the spring notes as much as I would last fall. So on to who I'm actually picking. Now that's, like I said, that's a crew chief thing. And I am picking Chase Elliott to win this thing again because, like I said, Alan Gustafson, he's got last year's notes. He is the only crew chief of the 4 that has a championship. I know Martin Truex Jr. has 3 wins on the year, and he's looked good at times. They have 3 or 4. I think he has 3. I'm going to go on that. But 3 wins on the year. He has not done great lately. He's had a few good runs. They haven't shown top speed. They haven't been a dominant car since midsummer. And making it to this point, I mean, it could have been Kyle Busch. It was very close. I think either one would be kind of the lame duck 4th in this instance because not even Denny Hamlin has shown the consistent ability to beat the Chevy guys. His 2 wins on the year, they've been in the playoffs, and that's great. It's helped him advance, but he's been, second or third fiddle a lot to the Chevys this year. I just don't see it being any different. You look at clutch races. Martinsville was a clutch race, and he was there for the win. But even if Alex Bowman doesn't spin him, I think he still gets around him. I think he's much faster at that stage of the race. I think Bowman had the fastest car on the track. I think it was inevitable at some point in time it was going to happen. I do hate that it knocked him back to 17. I'm not exactly sure where he finished. Let me check on that. But he didn't make it back to a top 10. Let's take a look. Oh no, he was 24th. Okay, so 24th. I mean, it sucks to fall from first, where you're thinking you got it, to 24th, but that's racing. That's short track racing. Also, something to consider, this next race is the last race for Brad Keselowski at Penske, Matt DiBenedetto at the Wood Brothers. It's likely the last race for quite a few guys that, especially is the final race for Chip Ganassi Racing. I'm sad to see them leave the sport. They've been around for a while. They've had some really good drivers. That was, Kyle Larson's team up until, last year when he was booted for things that we won't talk about. But they've had some great drivers. They've had a lot of wins. I think of Sterling Marlin when I say Chip Ganassi. He was driving the 40 Coors Light car. He was a good driver, man. Good old Sterling was he was getting it back then. And it's sad to see that history just go away. When Dodge came back to the sport, Ganassi was one of the first ones to jump on board, right behind Evernham. And it's just sad to see him go. But Trackhouse is taking over that organization. And Ross Chastain's going over with them. So there's going to be a lot of change. Next gen car next year. So this is the last race of this car's existence. We'll never see another race in this exact car. There's a chance that the Xfinity guys get the Cup Series car. That has happened, quite a bit. They just kind of hand them down after a few years. But I think at this juncture, the next thing for the Xfinity Series is also a new car. And I don't think those plans have even been started. If they have, they haven't been made public. I honestly think they're kind of happy with the car the way it is in the Xfinity series. We'll see how long that lasts. But this is a big goodbye race for a lot of drivers. A lot of teams might be going away. So there's the media attention is going to be on the championship four, but let's not forget some of the guys that are switching teams and the teams that are just going away completely. And for Brad Keselowski to become a minority owner at Roush, just to talk on that for a minute, the other day I was in a Twitter space group and they were talking about that. And, they thought that it was just so enticing for him to be a minority owner. And I disagree, first of all, if that's a thing, because he could have stayed at Penske and eventually become a minority owner. I truly believe that. I think the urgency was for Brad to have a secure ride for years to come. And with Austin Cindric coming up soon, even if he jumps in the 21, which was the plan, how many years can he run in that car before, it's time for him to be in a Penske car? And, now adding Harrison Burton as well. I think he knew the stable was full. And for him to have a long-term secured ride, the best opportunity was to take that minority ownership role with Roush Fenway Racing and be able to drive this 6 car. And I'm disappointed that he goes over there, takes over the 6 car. They're keeping Busher, but not adding a 3rd car, not adding an Xfinity team. Maybe soon, but it's a little disheartening to see that much of a. Yeah, I mean, he's a past champion. He's a good driver. I'm not a huge fan, but he's earned his stripes. He's done a lot of things in the sport. So for him to switch teams and not bring momentum to the team right away is going to be something, because next gen car, nobody knows what we're really going to see when we get to Daytona, but I think the projections for him for the first year or two are very low. I mean, no wins. I don't see him getting a win next year, unless it's a super speedway and it's just kind of a fluke. I mean, if Michael McDowell can win the Daytona 500, Brad Keselowski can win in a Roush Fenway racing car as well. I just don't see him going to a place like Atlanta or Dover and getting solid wins. I don't see that being in the near future for them, but maybe soon. You never know. I'm used to Roush having 4 cars and competing for wins every race, and we just haven't seen that in a very long time. But anyway, Phoenix, the championship race. Like I said, I'm picking Chase Elliott because Alan Gustafson is a championship crew chief. He's the only championship crew chief in the championship 4. For Truex Jr., I know he and James Small have worked well together, but they do not have a crown. They don't have a title yet. And I don't think they've performed under pressure as well as even Denny Hamlin, who I'll tell you, Denny Hamlin's no clutch driver. He's had opportunities to win championships in this format before, and they couldn't cash in. So, and I mean, he finished 4th of the 4 last year, and he was a non-factor. So I can't pick Denny Hamlin. I'm sorry. For those of you that are saying, this is Denny's year, how do you say that? He's won 2 races compared to 8 or 9 last year. It's just it's not something I could do. I can't pick Denny. I can't pick Martin Truex Jr. I can't even pick Kyle Larson. 9 wins this year. This is a race going in. You have to win, in my opinion. That's the only way to win the championship. I don't think in this format we're ever going to see, the guy finish 5th and still win the title. That's not going to happen. And Kyle Larson's won a lot of races this year, but I don't think they're going to be carrying a lot of momentum into this race. And it's the wrong time to have a lame duck race like Martinsville. Hopefully it doesn't carry over for them. Hopefully they can go in and get this practice session going and do great things. But I just don't have faith in it. We're going to see some great racing all around. I mean, you look at the truck series, that is all over the place. I was very unimpressed with the finish. I thought there was a lot of not even just racing, dirty racing, disrespectful racing at the conclusion of that race. And I don't understand how some of these guys can call themselves, professional drivers. It's kind of disheartening to see them race the way they are. And actually, Martin Truex Jr. made a comment about that. I believe it was Truex that said, none of these kids that are coming up have probably never worked on their own cars before, and that's why they race the way they do. They don't feel the need to take care of their cars. They have a team for that. They're just out there to race. And so they don't necessarily respect the process of getting the car ready as much, or, what you have to do weekly to build your name up so that, a sponsor will want to be on your car. Because when you have a name like they do now, I mean, the sponsors are just like, well, I'm good on your team, I'll sponsor that car. Like Kyle Busch Motorsports. They have a list of sponsors they use. Rowdy's energy drink. I mean, that's a team thing. And it's always going to be a sponsor. But if they weren't Kyle Busch's, company, would they still sponsor Kyle Busch Motorsports? I don't think so. I haven't. Kyle Busch is not my favorite driver. I'll tell you up front. And he's run his mouth a lot in times where he should have just been humble or just learned something. And some of these sponsors have to be like M&M's. How are they still Kyle Busch's sponsor after all this stuff that he's done? Hats off to him, because I would have dumped him a long time ago, and Interstate Batteries too. But that just ties in. You've got these truck series guys have to make a name for themselves, but it has to be a positive name, because you might be racing for a team right now that has sponsors. But if you go to the Xfinity series and you're driving for some team that, they're yearly trying to get new sponsors, they may not get that sponsor for you because, so-and-so's company doesn't like how you represent their brand on the track. And then whatever deal you may have with a team falls through. So I totally agree with Martin that these kids don't have the respect that is needed to move up and race in the Cup level yet. And that was very evident at the Martinsville race. Xfinity too wasn't as bad, but there was some wrecks in that race that I think you can shake your head and say that was totally unnecessary. That's not even racing. That's almost demolition derby style. Anyway, I would also like to say, though, speaking of Kyle Busch, like I said, not a fan. I was impressed with his post-race interview. He normally, if he doesn't make the championship or advance in any round, he's pretty upset, and he's going to tell everybody how crappy his team was. Or this was a good interview. He basically just said, look, this just wasn't our year. He actually congratulated Martin Truex Jr. in his own way. He said that his team did everything. They never quit working, which they didn't, because his car was crap for most of the day. And, they worked on it, got it to where he finished second. And hats off to them as well for, giving him a car he could actually run with, at the end. I don't know that I would ever say, great job, Kyle, on an interview, but I think that he nailed this one by, showing some class, congratulating his teammate and just saying he was proud of his team for never giving up. Not something you normally hear of Kyle Busch. He's a little late in his career to be learning those lessons, but at least he got it here, at some point. And then with the Brad Keselowski barbs that they keep talking about, I don't think those were even barbs. It's just Brad and Kyle don't really get along. And, they've had some incidents over the years. And I think that's just normal banter between the two of them. I don't even think that's worth talking about. I don't think Brad Keselowski really drove him dirty. I think he just was trying to get around, and it didn't work out. And so, anyway, yeah, so I look at Phoenix as an opportunity for a lot of guys, not just the championship before, but there are drivers in this field that did really good at Martinsville, like Eric Jones, finished 8th. He can take this result and try to put together a really good finish at Phoenix and then end the year on a really good note and start next year fresh. Another driver that did really good, Eric Almorolla. I know he had that win at New Hampshire. I almost count that as a fluke. That was the only time all year that he really ran well. But he ran 6th in this race, and he showed speed, not just the ability to be there at the end. He showed really good speed, and he ran with some really good drivers. And Chris Buescher as well. He finished 9th. And Buescher didn't show as much speed as he was in the right place at the right time for most of it. And he was there when it counted at the end. So hats off to those 3 guys for kind of breaking up the powerhouses, because you had a lot of, Chevys dominated the early part of the race. I mean, stage 1 and stage 2 was Chevy top 2, and then stage 2 was top 3 for Hendrick for both. But, Buescher was able to get in there, and Almorolla and Fords were able to get up there and mix it up with Brad Keselowski also in 3rd. But I said it a month ago, and now that we know who the 4 drivers are, I'll say it 20 more times. I never thought the Fords would make it to the championship 4. This has been an off year for them. You look at Kevin Harvick and Stewart-Haas Racing; those guys were bad this year. The only win for Stewart-Haas was the win for Eric Almirola. And like I said, that was a bit of a fluke to me. So for them to have 0 team wins when a year ago, Harvick had 9. 8 or 9. He had a lot. 8 or 9 wins. For that to be the year that they had, and not just Stewart-Haas, Ford in general is what I'm saying, because you look at the wins by Ford in general. I mean, this was not a great year for them. Keselowski won Talladega? Let's see. I'm going to take a look. I know they won the Daytona 500. And Blaney won 3 races, but Logano won at Bristol dirt. Keselowski won, Talladega. And those were their big wins. That was Logano's win and Keselowski's win. They didn't win any other races. And Blaney wins the Daytona race right before the playoffs start. And then I won't say lucked his way into a Michigan win, but he was there when it mattered. But, inside the playoffs, 0 Ford wins. 0 for 9. And this just wasn't a good year for them. Hopefully when the next gen car comes out, it's a little more of an even playing field, which is the whole point of the new car, is to even the smaller teams should have a chance to compete at some of these races a little better. That's all you can hope for, is that the testing sessions go well. And when we get to Daytona, we have a finished product where even the little guys like Live Fast Motorsports, those guys, those single car teams can at least compete and get top 10s when they need them. Funding is not easy for those teams. I actually did an interview with Matt Tift, who's the co-owner of Live Fast Motorsports, about a month ago. And he said that the biggest issue they're running into is the new cars are expensive, of course. But, the way they operate right now is they'll buy used parts from teams that they run them, they refurbish them, they resell them. There are no used parts, obviously, for the new car. So they're going into next season, they're probably going to buy, 2 new cars, a primary and a backup for Daytona. And that's probably what they have for a while until they can get used parts. They'll just, race careful, get some money in the bank and keep rolling. But But hopefully with this new gen car, teams like that can race hard, get good finishes, and not have to worry so much about the money side. I mean, once you buy a car, hopefully you can keep it at racing condition easier, I guess is what I'm trying to say, and not dump so much money into an A-shelf motor um, to try and compete at some of these tracks, because most of the big teams hate going to Talladega. They're not huge fans. But for the smaller teams, this is their golden opportunity to get good finishes, because if you avoid the big wreck, you stay out of trouble, or you may just be able to race your way up there and get the win. These are golden races for these guys to make money and grow into the rest of the season. And the next gen car might be exactly what these guys need to compete at some of the other tracks like Pocono, Indy, where it's more engine than you think. Also, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but with the conclusion of the last, not Martinsville, the race before that, that was the last race we had under the 550 horsepower package. And that was kind of a good moment. I was glad to see that go. I'm not a big fan of restricting horsepower and adding downforce just to make racing better. I think the model should have been add more downforce, keep horsepower, let teams do more with personalization. I mean, why mandate ride height for some tracks, and why do this? Just let them do their thing. So anyway, I'm excited about this weekend. 3 races that are going to be pretty crazy. I think the truck race is probably going to be the most fun to watch, because you've got a complete mixed bag there with Ben Rhodes and Matt Crafton. I mean, these guys are going up against John Hunter, Nemechek, and I forgot the 4th driver, and I suck. Anyway, I think that's going to be the best race. While I check on who the 4th driver is, because I can't remember. Zane Smith. How could I forget that one? Anyway, so Zane Smith as well. Man, like I said, it's going to be a crazy race. Zane was pretty aggressive there for his way to get to the championship. So you wonder if maybe he's got a few people out for him. And the Xfinity Series as well. You've got guys that like Austin Cindric and AJ Allmendinger they've been consistently good all year and have really made a name for themselves. And then you throw in a guy like Noah Gragson, who has not been great at times. He's won recently and he's been on great rolls. Does he steal the show? And then I have to throw this in there because I've already thought about it a lot. You realize if Daniel Hemrick wins a championship, there's a way for him to win and have not ever won a race in the series. Let's say he finishes second, but a non-championship 4 driver wins the race, and he wins the championship. He'd be the only driver in history to have never won a race and won a championship at any level. Like, that is, in this day and age, that is insane. But it's also a testament to how consistent they are, how good their team is to be able to go top to bottom every race and just be there. I mean, he's got 25 top 10s in 32 races this year. There is not one driver in any division that can say that. So I think that's pretty crazy that he can be that consistent. And he's also, topped that with 14 top 5s. I mean, he's always there, only 2 DNFs. So they racked up points by getting consistent finishes, while guys like Allgaier and Austin Cindric, those guys were getting wins left and right. AJ Allmendinger too. He just consistently played each race differently, finished up front, and I'm rooting for him. Honestly, I think he wins a lot of respect, even if he doesn't win the title just by being there. But I hope he wins the race, and it's his first win, and it's a championship. But even if he doesn't win the race, I hope he wins the title. I think you got to win to get it. I think it's that close, but it would be an amazing story if he does not win the race and still wins the title. Like that would really, really be a great story. Anyway, if you haven't done so, follow ASAP Sports on YouTube, on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter. That's a big one that I need you guys to do. It's at Osborne Chris, just like it is on the screen, but it's at Osborne Chris. And then also follow Sports and Culture Media on Facebook and on Twitter. If ASAP has a Twitter, follow them there as well. We're trying to get followers. We're trying to get content out to as many people as possible. We're trying to grow both of our bases so that, we can entice these sponsors to stick around. Last week we did our show at Mugshots Bar and Grill. It was a one race deal. It was a one show deal. But, hopefully, that's something we can talk with them about and grow that into maybe a once a month thing. So yeah, please do. Please watch the shows, comment, ask us questions. That gives us something to do for the next show. So when we do our show a week from today, we'll have the results of the championship, but we'll also have questions to talk about. So you ask, well, how does this happen? I can go do the research and find an answer, or we can just debate it or whatever. So do that. Do your diligence. Help me out. Help us out. Help ASAP. Help sports culture. Let's grow this thing. Until then, thank you guys for watching. Thanks again to Tony and Jay, our production guys. They make this happen. They make everything work. And we'll talk to you guys again on Monday. Have a great week. Watch the races. Grab some beer. Do the old-fashioned. See you guys soon.
All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. 365, we making a plays. You talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety, topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. In the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, like working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. All sports, all plays.